Do you have a knack for taking things apart and then putting them back together? Do you always see new ways that you could improve things, yet hesitate on getting started because you don't quite have all the details yet? Let's talk about that. Today's video, we're going to be diving into the wealth dynamics mechanic profile type. We're going to talk about the winning formula and the losing formula of some of the world's wealthiest people, people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, or even the late Sam Walton. This short video could end up saving you thousands of hours doing the wrong work, taking the wrong advice, and wasting a ton of time with the wrong people. If you're a wealth dynamics mechanic, this short video right here could end up being the best next step to help you keep finding your flow. The video you're about to watch is actually from a group profile debrief that I did for a whole bunch of mechanics inside of the ACE community. Watch it all the way to the end because it's going to tell you how you should actually be approaching building wealth, how you should create it, how you're able to leverage it, how you're able to make sure you hold on to the cash flow. This is so critical for mechanics. So watch it all the way to the end. And when you're done, if you'd like to get some help in your business, if you'd like to join our next mechanic mastermind, go ahead and leave a comment or reach out to my team and we'll make sure that we get you the info. All right, let's dive in. All right, so here we are, mechanic group debrief. We're going to be talking today about how you can find your flow. So the purpose of this event, this debrief, is for you to really get a better understanding of how is a mechanic different from the other 7 profiles, and what does that mean for you? So we're going to get into that kind of differentiation. We're also going to be talking about individualization. So, okay, great. Now that you know you're a mechanic, what specifically about you, how do you show up as a mechanic? Because not all mechanics are created equally. We can see that actually in the chart whenever you get your wealth dynamics profile. And then the next part is the application. And we're going to spend the most time on that. And that is, what is your personal pathway to building wealth based off of your profile? And we'll talk about how that may or may not be perfectly aligned with you based off of your chart. And then at the end, we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have questions as I'm going through the first 3 sections, please write those questions down. Feel free to put them in the chat if you want to, and we will come back around and address all the questions at the end. However, during the actual first 15 minutes, because I'm recording this for YouTube, I'm not going to take any questions. Does that make sense for everybody? All right, cool. So the first thing to really talk about and understand when it comes to your profile as a wealth dynamics mechanic is that not all mechanics are created equally. So if you see here on the right side of the screen, this is an example of what we call the spider graph. So most of you have already taken your wealth dynamics assessment, and so you've seen your wealth dynamics report. And if you read through it, 36 pages of information for you to consume. You're a mechanic, so you probably have already done that. I find that some of the other profiles will take months before they even look at the profile report, but oftentimes the mechanics are the ones that dig right in. So you can see here in this example that this person isn't all mechanic, right? They've got 40% dynamo. Let me move, you guys are in front of it, so I can't see the percentages. There we go. Pull that back up. All right, so this person has 40% dynamo, right? 8% blaze, 8% tempo, 44% steel. So that's great. This person's a good example of what a mechanic really looks like. Now, as a mechanic, you're also going to have a wing of being a creator and a wing of being a lord, right? So that means that you're going to have that ability to move into the dynamo, that ability to move into the steel. But as you can see here, the blaze and the tempo are very, very low. Now, this person's profile, if this was you and you were this extreme in the steel and the dynamo frequencies, everything that you read in this report will feel true. Now, let's say that you're a different type of mechanic. Let's say you're a mechanic that's 20% dynamo and 25%, 30% steel, and then you've got some small percentages of blaze and tempo, but they're like double what you see here. Then when you look at the profile report and you read through the instructions and what it's telling you about yourself, you may say, you know what, that doesn't feel super true for me. Parts of it do, parts of it don't. So here's what's important to understand about wealth dynamics. Wealth dynamics is a system of differentiation, and it is a system of self-knowledge. And the more that you understand who you are and what makes you different from others is the more that you can aim to be in your flow, to build your business in such a way that the activity that you're doing on a day-to-day basis is easy and fun and fruitful, right? So as you understand wealth dynamics at a deeper and deeper and deeper level, the things that you read, even in your original report, will become more or less true based off of how much you actually have dynamo and steel and how much you may have of the other energies. And so what has been really powerful for me as a wealth dynamics creator, I've got a mechanic wing. So I understand, a little bit about the way you guys think. And I've got a star wing. So I understand the way that those guys operate as well. But I'm 76% dynamo, which means there's not a whole lot left for my steel or my blaze side. And there's nothing on my tempo. Right. So what that means for me is that almost everything I read in this report, when I first read my wealth dynamics report, rang so true for me that I was ecstatic to run with it. But it also meant that I didn't fully understand my wings. And so what I've learned over time is that I do have a mechanic wing and a star wing, but my mechanic wing is only 8%, whereas my star wing is 20%. So that means that I'm going to be more naturally leaning towards star, whereas another creator might lean more towards a mechanic. And so we know when we look at that, creators who are more leaning towards the star start companies and movements, and creators that are leaning more towards the mechanic invent things. And so it's the same for the mechanic. If you're leaning more towards the Lord or more towards the creator, it may be that you're better at improving and innovating and coming up with a better system, or it may be that you're also really good at being able to maintain the systems. And so you may find that you spend more of your time maintaining existing systems and less of your time innovating better ones, but you're going to be moving back and forth between those two. So let's talk about, in general, if you were a 50% dynamo and a 50% steel mechanic, your strengths would be completing things, finding ways to improve systems, making things simpler, perfecting projects, paying attention to the minute details, right? The mechanics are the people that reach out to me and tell me about every typo and error that I've got in a PDF or on my presentations, because they just see them naturally because you have that eye for detail. Now, the opposite of that is that because of it, it takes you a long time to complete tasks. Right? Two of you have already shared with me, hey, this is cool, but I want to start a business. I just haven't started it yet. Or I have an idea and I haven't brought it to market yet. Mechanics you're such a good finisher that you hesitate to commit to something new until you know for sure that it's something that you can finish or you can complete. Often getting too caught up in the details, you forget about the team around you. So oftentimes mechanics can come off a little bit brash or a little bit rough, a little bit abrasive, even though they're not actually being that way. They're just focused on details. They're not focused on people, and people and details tend to be pretty opposite frequencies when it comes to how the I Ching elucidates the differences between the blaze and the steel person, right? And one of the other challenges of being a mechanic is you can tend to be inflexible and unwilling to change. And that can lead to the inability for you to be able to be in a space of newness, of growth, and of possibility. Your successes are often going to come when you're looking for ways to improve things, right? So rather than trying to come up with something brand new out of the sky, right? And rather than just sitting there all day, just doing the same menial task, you're going to be able to go in, tinker, figure out what needs to be changed, update it, change it, and make it better. The mechanics that stand out most in my mind are Sam Walton, right? Michael Dell, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. None of these guys actually created anything. We think of Sam Walton as like the inventor of Walmart, but what he really did, if you read his biographies, he would actually go into competing stores and he would take notes around how they do everything. And then he would go to a payphone and he would call back to Arkansas and talk to his team and tell them how they're going to optimize and improve. You see, Walmart wasn't a five and dime. Walmart wasn't a store that only sold hardware. It was, how can we improve the way that people shop where they can get everything in one place? Who else has done that? Jeff Bezos, right? He's the modern man's Sam Walton. He said, how can I get products to people easier, faster, cheaper? How can I make it simpler to buy? In fact, they tried to patent, I don't know if they actually got the patent, but they tried to patent the one-click checkout because nobody had figured out a way to set up a system to where the person only has to click one button to check out before Amazon created it. So it's all about optimizing and improving existing systems, right? That is going to be your path to wealth. And the best roles in teams are going to be creative problem solving, making smart improvements, organizing roles in teams, right? Task-focused leadership. This is where you're really going to shine. But understand that not all mechanics are created equally. So the extent to which you do some of these versus some of the other activities is going to be largely based off of what are your unique percentages. And so I encourage you, even after you go through this debrief and you watch this video, to actually take the time to not only go through the profile report, maybe come out to one of the workshops that we host so that you can start to understand how the different pieces work, actually interact with people that are in different profiles than you, but more importantly than any of that, is start applying it to your life. Because when you're using it, it becomes a different type of knowledge, right? There's the knowledge that's in our brains, right? Which mechanics have a ton of. because mechanics tend to be very cerebral, very smart, very intuitive, and it becomes a mechanical understanding and a belief and a knowing in our body. And that comes from the visceral activity of being in the real world and actually using this stuff. And that's really where it's anchored the most for me. So let's talk about how you actually can create and be able to have that, that value as a mechanic showing up. So I'm gonna share my iPad screen here real quick. We'll take a look at the wealth dynamic square and understand exactly how you contrast with others. So all right, there we are. So this is the wealth dynamics square. And as a wealth dynamics mechanic, you are right up here on the corner, which means that you are going to have the intuition, right, as your thinking dynamic. So in wealth dynamics, we always talk about wealth equals value times leverage. Wealth equals value times leverage. Now, value is created through innovation, right? Intuition leads to innovation. Or value is going to be created, right, through timing, which is more of a sensory thinking dynamic. So when we talk about how value is really created by the way that we think. So this is your thinking dynamic. So when we look at that, we say, okay, well, the way that a mechanic thinks, being on the top end of this, is going to be more intuitive, right? So you think by kind of seeing the dots that have not yet been connected, and you figure out a way to connect them, right? Very different from somebody that's down on this end, which is more sensory, who they're more about like, what's in my immediate environment and reacting to that and responding to that in their environment. It's not that they can't be intuitive and you can't be sensory, but it's the degree to which you're intuitive or the degree to which they're sensory, right? Now, that is the thinking dynamic, and that is how we create value. Now, the next question is, all right, well, what is your action dynamic? Now, the action dynamic is how do you get things done? So how you think versus how you do. And the action dynamic is actually what creates leverage. So our action dynamic is actually on this x-axis here. I'm sorry, the y-axis was thinking. X-axis is going to be about action. Your action dynamic. So the action dynamics, the way that things get done for the steel person, which a mechanic is all the way over here on the left, so it's steel, right, is actually going to be multiplication. That's how they provide the leverage. Now, the way that you provide that is through an introverted action dynamic. So you're an introvert. Now, some of you are like, yes, that makes sense. I'm an introvert. I spend all my time at home. I don't want to go party with people all the time, and going into big crowds feels like extra work. Others of you are going to say, I actually love to be around people. It's one of the things that I enjoy the most. And so I don't feel like an introvert, and I never have. Here's what's important to understand in wealth dynamics. Introvert versus extrovert is not a measure of how much you fill up and get your energy from other people. It's a measure of how you get things done. So if you have an introverted action dynamic, that means that you get things done yourself. You figure out exactly how they need to get done. Now, higher level mechanics may hire people underneath them to get things done, but you would never delegate something to somebody else if you didn't fully understand how it was going to get done, right? Now, that may make perfect sense to you, but what may make a lot less sense to you is the extroverted action dynamic, right? Again, I've had people who are Blaze tell me, oh, I'm an introvert. I need time alone for me to recharge. And I get that, right? I totally understand that. I'm the same way. But when it comes time to get something done, an extroverted action dynamic says, who is going to actually get that done? Who is going to be the person that can solve this for me? So if you're an introverted action dynamic, you say, how do I actually get this thing done? So you'll notice over here, we've got a question next to each of these. The super question of the steel is how. How does this get done? So you can answer the question way better than somebody who's Blaze, but they know who needs to get something done. And oftentimes that's the reason why the Blaze will call you to come help them, because you're the who has the how, right? And sometimes when you don't know exactly who you need to help you on your team, go to the Blaze person, because they may be the person who knows the who, because they're really good at those who's. And so this is how you are different from everybody else, is that you are up here in the corner, which means that your primary is going to be a combination of intuition and introverted action dynamic, right? Which means you are going to intuitively see, how do I get things done myself? And then you're going to know how it needs to happen. And you're going to go in there and you're going to tinker and make it happen. So this is the differentiation between you and the rest. Understand there is also a level of individualization, right? Which is what we talked about based off of how much of that spider graph, right, actually is in Dynamo and how much of that spider graph is actually in Steel. So let's talk about how you actually create wealth, right? So I want you to understand as I go through this, we're not going to dig into the wealth spectrum on this training. So we're not going to talk about the different levels and how if you're starting out at the very beginning, you need to be really contributing to somebody else's flow. And then as you get up towards the top, now it's about being able to control that flow and bringing in employees. We're not going to get into that, but I want you to understand that this system is so valuable that it can help you at all of those levels. So some of the things I'm going to say here may not feel immediately actionable for you because it's the ultimate path to wealth, right? So for example, I tell lords all the time that as a lord, you should be controlling cash flow producing assets. And they go, well, I'm a coach, or, I run a church, or like I don't control assets. And that doesn't seem like something I can do right now. And I remind them, I say, yeah, that's the whole reason we're having this conversation. This is a differentiation. You have been conditioned to do the same things that everybody else does. That's the main understanding from wealth dynamics, is that it teaches you how to not try and be everything to everybody and all of the things at once. When you are truly just focused on being a mechanic, you will spend the least amount of time and you will make the most progress, the most money, right? And the biggest impact. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about wealth creation. So some of these things are going to hit home and you're going to go, I'm going to go do that right now. And others of these things are like a year, 5 years, 10 years out. But at least now you have the trajectory and you know what things you should be doing in order to start building wealth. So let's start by talking about building a foundation. So as a mechanic, you're going to build your foundation by understanding that while you are very dynamic, right? You have that ability to innovate, right? You also have introverted tendencies. So you're likely to pick your friends very carefully, right? So that is awesome. You need to use that same pickiness when it comes to picking your wealth network as well. So you want to align yourself with people who have already created products or businesses, right? That you're going to be able to distribute or franchise with those who can connect you to the market. So it's really about saying, okay, who are the people, right, that I can be aligning myself with, where I can go in and I can improve and I can tinker and I can make better the systems that they're using. And then who are the people that can connect me with those types of people? So your foundation begins by not being alone. It begins by saying, how can I connect with other people? And the primary people for you are going to be the value creators, the people that actually have businesses and products, and the networkers, the people that are connected with the actual businesses that you want to be going in and helping and tweaking and improving. Now, your moment of wealth creation, where you actually are creating wealth, comes from when you invest your time in innovating and creating systems and processes in the businesses you've chosen to become involved. So I have a friend, she is a mechanic, she has a mechanic business, and her entire business model is to go into existing companies that are doing multi-6, 7, or even 8 figures. So companies that have large volume, and she can go in and without adding a penny to the top line, without going in at all and saying, okay, we got to do more marketing and more sales and blaze activity. She just looks at the existing business and says, okay, you are totally out of flow. Like, you're a bottleneck in your business here. So here's how you reorganize that system. You're a bottleneck in your business here. So here's how you get better people into the right places so that they can be able to release and unlock more flow for you. So as a mechanic, you can go into those existing businesses and make them better. We'll talk in a moment how you actually capture wealth from that, but this is how you actually create the wealth. Okay, so this includes the constant process of stress testing, of refining, and of measuring performance and looking for ways to extract even more value from the system. Okay, so again, think of Ray Kroc. Okay, he did not create the McDonald's system, but when he saw it, he was like, oh my goodness, I can do something with this. And he transformed that system piece by piece, improving it and taking that system, systematically spreading it into the franchise all across the nation, right? Same thing with Jeff Bezos, same thing with Mark Zuckerberg, right? Facebook wasn't even his idea, right? He simply took it and improved it. And so that moment of wealth creation is when you can improve things. Think about how well Facebook works, right? There's documentaries that tell us about how it works too well, okay? Versus maybe a platform that was built by a creator or a supporter that may technically work, but you have to do it one way. You know, when you're a mechanic, you're going to create stuff that is stress tested. You already know how people can break it. You look for how it can be broken, and then you fix that, because ultimately it's about extracting even more value. So let's talk about how you can create even more value. This is when you start taking activities that include documenting systems, documenting processes, putting into place checks and measures. Right? If you're watching this video right now and you are a deal maker, this probably sounds like nails on a chalkboard. But for auto mechanics, it's like, that's easy. Of course I can do that. Trust me, there are other people for which this sounds horrible, right? It sounds like grinding their gears. But for you, it's like, oh yeah, I could totally document systems and processes and checks and measures. But if you're doing it for yourself in a brand new business for your own company and there's no flow, that's not creating value. That's why we said we want to start by making that foundation be a foundation of connections with people who have already created value, but they need your genius to come in and be able to shift that. Because ultimately, when you do this, that value that you create in that system and those checks and those measures, that's what endures from not only what you're working on now, but into the next business and the next company and the next project after that. Now let's talk about how you own the value you create, because it is no mistake that there have been many mechanics that go get a job, they work inside an organization, they tweak and twist and measure and stress test and improve things, and then they own none of it. They just got paid for their time. So you want to own the value that you create. So to do that, you need to own the systems, right, that you are creating. In other words, if you came to me as a creator and you said, hey, I love what you're doing with your business, but you're only going to one channel. If we went in and we systemized and optimized and got you the financing and everything that you needed, and then we were able to say, open up to 5 markets instead of 1, you just multiplied my business by 500%. But if you custom built that system for me and you can't then take that system into the next business and you have to do that over and over and over again, that's not going to allow you to really own the value. Whereas if instead you have a process, a system, a documentation that you use, and a specific avatar, a person, a customer that you want to be able to help, then you'll be able to take that genius of yours and that system that you've built from one place to the next and continue to rinse and repeat. So let's talk about how you actually leverage. The way that you leverage is, again, through the system of your own creation. Whether you're licensing your system or you're franchising it, you want to ensure that you're leveraging the lowest common denominator. All right. The more idiot proof this system is, the greater your ability is going to be to actually leverage the system. So right now, think about the business that you're in. Think about the company that you want to create. Think about whatever the activity is that you're doing the most of right now. Are you finding ways to be able to duplicate that so that you can multiply it and leverage from there? Or are you just using that systematic genius to fulfill somebody else's need and then having to go back to the river of wealth over and over again with your cup? Ultimately, we want to leverage so that we can take the value that you've created and use it and grow it in the marketplace over and over and over. And finally, let's talk about how you secure your cash flow, because this is incredibly important. Your cash flow is going to come from the value you deliver with your system. But you got to make sure that you have the right license, franchise, and distribution agreements in place that will allow you to create an ongoing source of cash flow from your system. So if you go in and you help me improve my business, make sure that I'm having to pay for that system. Make sure that I am licensing or in some other way having to pay you over and over and over again for the system that you came in and instituted one time. Again, you don't want to come in, provide that value, and then leave, and you got to go start all over again from zero. Make sure you still have a piece. Become a master of perfecting processes, and the people like me who are creators, right, who have the products, the people who have financing and connections, they're ultimately going to want to find their way to you anyway. Again, think about Ray Kroc. Think about the system that he built and how investors and financiers and people with products wanted to come to McDonald's and, hey, can we get our product onto your shelf? The creators are going to come to you whenever you've created this system and that dependability and people know that you have it. And then the final piece on this is actually if you're going to bring a mechanic onto your team. So some of you, as you're watching this training right now, you say, man, that all sounds really great and good, Trey, but that is like really far past where I'm at right now in my experience as a business owner. I'm just trying to connect with the team where I can get into flow right now. Maybe you've been to one of my workshops or you've studied the wealth spectrum or you've watched the wealth spectrum YouTube videos that I've done. And you say, I'm at this red level right now. Like, how do I use my mechanic genius? I can't go build systems and processes that take 9 weeks for me to do. I got to pay the bills. Okay, cool. Well, then go get onto a team as a mechanic, right? There's plenty of Tempos, Blazes that are looking for mechanics on their teams. So if you're going to be a mechanic on a team, or if you're watching this video right now and you want to bring a mechanic onto your team, understand that mechanics are your best completers. They will wrap up the process and find smart ways to do it even better next time. But don't ask a mechanic to start from scratch, right? You want to give them an existing process, an existing product for them to improve on. And while they work fine on their own, understand that they do sometimes find social situations uncomfortable. I had a mechanic on my team, and at the end of the week, I said, hey, It's not required, but if you want to, we're all going to be getting over to my house and we're going to have a barbecue and I'm going to have some fire in the backyard. And if you want to come, you can do that. And she's like, that sounds like more work. I got to go be around people. So I get it. Maybe it doesn't make sense to ask your mechanic to go be your primary negotiator and salesperson, right? So understand where you fit on a team or where the mechanic should be fitting on your team and proceed accordingly from there.
And that's what we have for our Wealth Dynamics mechanics. If you watched this video and you still don't know what your profile type is, go take the test. You'll find a link to that down in the description. And if you do already know that you are a mechanic and you'd like to get some help actually getting on the court in your business, helping you find the right people, getting into flow, taking it really to that next level, there's also a link in the description on how you can reach out to a member of our team so that we can help you figure out what is your best next step. If you liked this video, please understand that we make these videos to help you find more flow in your life and to help other entrepreneurs as well. And when you like it and you leave a comment, that actually helps other people find it. So if you'd be willing, please do both of those things. Leave us a big takeaway or a big question that you might have. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel. That way you get a notification every single time that we put an episode up. All right, I look forward to seeing you the next time we have an episode. And until then, keep finding your flow.